and looked back, remembering what she considered to be the last days of a normal life and the first days of a paranormal life. They had been on a train heading for the Paradise Hotel. It was one of the best-rated hotels in the world and brought the town a lot of prosperity. It was a small town, but it was also highly prosperous. Robert had found out his best friend Tyler had been murdered by the vampires, and Robert and Max were attacked one night just while they were heading for the town. A lot of things happened, and eventually, they came to the conclusion that they had sacred powers. And why don't they make enchanted guns? Robert asked half-heartedly. Who knows? Maybe they have to wait until guns are old, and told him. They heard a crashing noise, and Robert ran down the stairs. A person dressed fully in black was in the main hallway and threw a black orb at Anne, and did a side flip and ran toward him. He pulled a dagger out, and took his hand and twisted his arm, bringing the dagger into his stomach. He cried out, spitting blood, and started on fire, fading away. That's a demon, Anne said, unsheathing her own daggers from their sheaths. Oh, joy, Robert said, gripping onto his trident. He didn't have any protection gear now, but he had managed before without it. A moment later, they heard a man screaming in pain, and another man dressed in black was thrown at them. He was already on fire, though, and faded. Algren and Max ran towards Robert and Anne. We have killed a lot of them already, but they keep on coming, Max announced to them. Where's Ferdith? Robert asked. I'm not sure, Algren said. I'll go look for Ferdith. You three kick some demon. Ahem. Max wasn't able to finish since a demon jumped onto Robert's back. Robert fell but did a backflip up and pounded the demon in the face. He unsheathed his sword, and the blade cut through the demon's chest, and it faded in flames. Be careful, you three, Max said, flying up the stairs with his angelic wings. Ferdith was in the potion room hastily mixing ingredients. He heard a growl and quickly turned around. A person dressed in black, with a deformed face, was looking at him with red eyes. Ferdith threw the potion on the ground, and the room was filled with mist. The demon cried out, shielding its eyes, but it set on fire and faded. Ferdith then grabbed another potion and ran out of the room. Max accidentally flew into him, knocking the potion to the ground. They heard a couple of demons howling and falling down. Well, I was going to use the potion in a different spot, but I guess it worked good enough, Ferdith said, standing up. Look out! Max exclaimed. Ferdith turned around and dodged a demon's fist. Max slammed himself into the demon, biting into its hand. The demon cried in agony as it was surrounded by white light and faded. My bite's worse than my bark, Max told Ferdith, who seemed to be shocked. Meanwhile, Robert heard another demon crying in pain when his trident went through its chest. Have we ever considered an alarm system? Robert asked half sarcastically. It would be a good idea, Anne said, rolling over the back of a demon and embedding her daggers in its stomach. Robert slid on the ground a couple of feet and tripped another demon. He unsheathed his sword and brought it down on the demon's chest. It howled and turned to flame. I wonder how Max and Ferdith are doing? Algren asked them, leaning against the wall almost casually. Robert couldn't finish as a demon jumped down from the wall in front of him. Robert swung his trident, cutting into its chest, and the demon backed up while green blood oozed from its chest. Robert swung again, barely missing its neck. Robert then had an idea on how to clear all the demons. Everybody down the passage, Robert yelled at them, and chanted something, and a door appeared, and they went down it. Ferdith and Max were already there. A couple of minutes later, Robert had allowed himself to get surrounded by demons. They were all hissing at him, trying to intimidate him. Sorry to disappoint you all, but I have no time for this, Robert said, raising both of his hands, and a white light surrounded him. The demons hissed and shielded their eyes. Robert then brought his hands out, and the holy light went through the hallway as the demons cried in fear, agony, and defeat. All but one demon had been turned into flames. The demon was holding a black orb in its hand. The orb of darkness, Robert gasped. The demon faced him. It too, like all the former demons before him, was dressed completely in black with pitch-black eyes. The difference was his hair was blonde and spiky, and he had a couple of scars above his eyes. He was also very muscular, like Robert. Yes, chosen one, the demon said, taking a step towards him with the orb. Robert strafed to the right a couple of feet. Do you fear me, O mighty chosen one? Are you afraid? Look into the orb, and your fears will be over with, the demon told him, strafing left. Robert drew his golden trident and held it out in front of him, ready to attack. Always the fight, isn't there? Oh, well, I haven't had a good fight in a couple of centuries, he said. The demon with the orb then rushed towards Robert. Robert ducked down and rolled towards him a couple of feet, tripping him. The demon tripped but then froze in midair and did a backflip, kicking Robert in the stomach. Robert clutched his stomach, but the demon hit him across the face and tripped him. Robert fell onto his back, and the demon slammed his foot into Robert's stomach. Robert cried out in pain, but he was able to trip the demon from the ground. He jumped up and returned the favor from the demon. Robert slammed his foot into the demon's stomach. He kicked the demon in the side of the face, but the demon jumped up and punched Robert again, spinning around. Robert stepped back and swung his trident at the demon's back, but the demon spun around, missing the tip by inches. The demon then lunged for Robert again, but his trident ripped into the demon's stomach, and the demon fell, trying to hold its insides in. Robert then tore into the demon's back, and it sprawled to the ground. Robert swung his trident to finish it off, but the demon simply disappeared. Robert flipped around and saw it standing behind him. Its wound appeared to be healed. I haven't been wounded for a couple of centuries. Congratulations, the demon said, punching Robert across the face and slamming into him. Robert was thrown back 6 feet and landed on both of his feet and one hand. Robert then held out both his hands again, and he was surrounded by white light. The demon hastily grabbed onto the orb in his pocket, but it was too late since the holy light hit him before he could hold it up. The demon yelled in agony as it was blown back 5 feet. Robert suspected this was a higher-level demon since that would have instantly killed most demons. The demon quickly stood up and formed a dark bolt in his hand. He threw it at Robert, and Robert quickly unsheathed his sword and brought it up. The bolt hit the sword and reflected, hitting the demon. The demon yelled in pain as it was blown back. "Two can play at your holy attack," the demon said, standing up. He held out both his hands, and he was surrounded by a black light. Robert did the same and was surrounded by a white light. They both pushed holy energy and demonic energy forward, and both of the lights met as they struggled to push it forward. The demon's light won, however, and the white energy disappeared. Robert did a couple of backflips, avoiding the black energy, but he couldn't avoid it and yelled in pain when the light finally hit him. Robert flipped towards the demon, unsheathing his sword, nearly cutting the demon's feet off. The demon jumped up and kicked Robert in the stomach. "No more games. I'll just take your soul from you," the demon said, holding the orb out. Robert felt something pulling at him, and occasionally his vision blurred, and he was out of breath. The demon concentrated on the orb more, but Robert still barely kept himself together. The next instant, the demon glanced up and saw a light bolt heading his way. He ran back, taking his concentration off of Robert, and the light bolt hit the ground. A woman draped in red clothing revealed herself from the darkness. "Glad to have you back," Robert greeted Valerias, standing up and breathing heavily. "Good to see you again also," Kevin said, revealing himself as well. The demon looked at them all in hatred. "You may have won this time, but next time I will come more prepared," the demon said as he was surrounded by fire and faded away. "Welcome back to demon-slaying times," Robert said sarcastically, sheathing his sword and turning around. Max's obsession. A couple of days later, Robert walked out of the endless library with a white orb in his hand. He held the orb carefully in his hand as he walked up the steps to a glowing white building high above. He reached the doors and greeted one of the guards in golden chainmail. About 10 minutes later, he was talking to a white-robed person with a wooden staff. Yes, thank you for bringing the orb to me. We will shroud it in a place the demons will never consider. Why do you think the demons directly attacked us? We don't have the orb, Robert asked him. Well, you are a fulmination to them. We have put magical enchantments in and around the castle. That's good, but do you have any clue who that demon was with the orb? Robert asked. Tyros, a demon lord. Luckily, he didn't use any overly powerful spells, the white-robed man said. A couple of minutes later, Robert walked back to the castle. Kevin was sprawled out on the couch. Max lay down on the blue-carpeted floor, stretching himself out. Valerius was sitting on the couch with and on the opposite side of the room. Where's Algren? Robert asked Max. He went to Fedzer's Magic, Max told him indifferently. Fedzer's Magic was one of the many magic shops in Falurko. Robert slumped down into a chair and changed the channel on the television with the remote. I was watching that, Kevin exclaimed, grabbing another remote and changing it back to the documentary. Well, the news is much better, Robert said, changing it back to the 24-hour news channel. The news is worthless, Kevin said, changing it back to the documentary. Max sighed and ran upstairs. He nearly ran into Ferdith on the way up. Sorry about that, Max said, passing by and nudging the door open as he entered the library. In his spare time, he usually found himself reading. He jumped onto a desk and nudged a book to fall onto the floor. He jumped down and worked a couple of minutes, trying to get the book to the right page with his paw. When he found the page, he smiled and began his reading session. Meanwhile, Robert and Kevin were still having a conflict about the television. Valerius and had left to go shopping for clothes. Kevin, we need to stay updated on the news. We are the chosen ones after all, Robert was saying to Kevin. Correction, you and are the chosen ones, and this documentary is much more interesting, Kevin countered Robert. I'll just go watch the news in my room then, Robert said, getting up, and he ran up the stairs. Whoa, Kevin said, switching the channel back to the documentary. So, you have an interest in Kevin now? And asked Valerius, rummaging through a pile of cloaks. Some of them were dusty with mothballs, and some were new with golden lacing. Yeah, but you know, he's part dragon vampire, and I'm a sorceress who has been alive for over 500 years, Valerius told N. Interbreeding, and told Valerius half-heartedly. Do I look good in purple? Valerius asked, sweeping a purple cloak over her head. Red is more your color, but green wouldn't be bad, and said, looking at a red cloak with gold lacing. Red is more your color also. It's better without the lacing. However, Valerius told N. Actually, I like black cloaks with gold lacing, but they remind me too much of Seraph, and said. Tell me about it. We've both been affected by him, Valerius said. Well, I wasn't technically dead, and told her. Neither was I. I could be resurrected after all, Valerius inquired. Well, we have a bunch of things in common then. Oh my God, look. And said, pointing across the room. They both grinned when they saw Lucretia in golden clothing. Lucretia wasn't the type for selective clothing and shopping. Lucretia noticed them and walked over. Greetings, the Shurents are still pleased. I have been informed there was a misunderstanding on the demon's side, and you were attacked, Lucretia said, looking at Anne. It was nothing. Robert really showed Tyros he wasn't such a lord after all, and said, smiling. Well, that is nice to hear, Lucretia said. And Valerius weren't shocked when Lucretia sort of faded out of their view. Robert was sprawled on the bed watching TV intently when he heard a voice in his head. Meet Horus at the arena of the gods now, he heard someone say to him. Is that you, Lucretia? Robert asked out loud. Yes, it is me. The voice in his head replied, How do I get there, and why do I need to be there? Robert asked. Go to the endless library and go right down the first hallway. A door will appear, only you can see it for now. That will lead to the arena of the gods. Horace has a trainer he wants you to consult with. The voice ended, and Robert knew he had lost contact with her. He sighed indifferently and went out to the courtyard. He jumped on a golden motorcycle, which surprisingly flew up into the air, and he flew it to the library. When he landed, it disappeared, and he walked toward the library's golden doors. He took a right down the first hallway and saw another set of golden doors. He entered, and a white light surrounded him, and he passed out. "This is boring," Algren said to himself, looking at all the books. The shop only had so many books to offer, and half of them he couldn't even read. "I see you've found the book section," he heard a voice from behind. Algren flipped around, nearly stepping on Max's paw. "I finished the book I was reading, so I thought I would check on you," Max reassured him. "This shop is boring," Algren commented indifferently to Max. Without warning, Max hastily trotted off and looked at an ancient-looking book. "What is it?" Algren said, running up to look at the book Max was looking at. "It's a novel by my favorite author," Max said, a little too enthusiastically. "It looks over 100 years old," Algren said, looking at the book as if it were grotesque. "It's new. That's just the binding on the book. If you bother to look, all of the new books are required to have the binding when they are bought," Max explained to Algren. "Did you bring any gold?" Max asked Algren. "Shouldn't we ask Robert and first to buy it?" Algren asked him. Max sighed. "I am the eldest of them, so I think I can buy a book without their consent," Max said. Algren pulled out a pouch of gold coins. He grabbed the ancient book and put it on the front counter. An old man was working, and he asked him for an ID. "ID to buy a book?" Algren was offended. "Just a second," Max said, rummaging through a backpack which a moment ago had been on his back. "Here it is," Max said with a golden card in his mouth. Algren took it, surprised that there was no slobber on it. The old man examined it and took 4,578 gold coins. "What?" Algren said. "That's how much it costs," Max said, as if it were obvious. "For a patriarchal-looking book?" Algren asked. "It's not just any book, I hope you know," Max argued. A couple of minutes later, they both left the shop. Algren was mumbling something under his breath as they left. "Algren, you should really go up into the library sometime," Max told him. "Why?" Algren asked, swinging his mace in the air a couple of times. "Literature is being forgotten by the younger generation today." "Damn, I'm making myself sound elderly," Max said, sounding irritated with himself. "You are elderly, aren't you?" Algren asked him. "Watch your mouth." "I bite hard," Max answered, audaciously. They walked to a teleporter, and Max ordered, "Castle." A moment later, they were sitting down in the living room. "Give me that," Max said to Kevin, snatching the remote in his teeth and, with expert skill for a dog, changed it to a dog show contest. "Thank you, Max." "That documentary was getting boring," Kevin said, as if he couldn't change the channel himself. They all heard a crashing noise and rushed into the other room. There was a green mist in the room, and the wooden table had fallen over. Many glass bottles were shattered, and liquids leaked onto the floor. They heard a moaning noise and saw Ferdith standing up. "What happened?" Kevin demanded. "I was making a sleeping potion since I haven't been able to get to sleep, but I mixed the wrong ingredients and—" Ferdith was interrupted. "We can guess the rest," Max said. "It is best to leave this room. Some of the fumes might I say, do strange things," Ferdith said, walking out of the room. Everybody followed and shut the door. "I think I'm going to go read." "Algren, take that book to the library," Max said, jumping up the stairs. Algren sighed and followed him with the book in his hand. When they entered the library, Max opened the first page with his paw. Algren started to walk out of the room, but Max told him to stop. "There is a rather interesting section in the back. I insist you go look at a book and read," Max told him. Algren started to protest, but a stare from Max told him otherwise. Algren trudged to the back of the room and looked through some of the books. He found a book about a boy who was born in Marilosa. Marilosa was the realm of the demons and the necromancers. He read the first page and resisted the urge to throw it across the room. What were books for? They were just boring. Most of them didn't even have pictures. Algren set the book down and tried to sneak out of the room, but a growl from Max told him that he had been caught. Algren went to the back of the room again and picked a book up. It was a book about what to do if you were in a burning building. Algren cursed. This library had ridiculous information in it. He tossed the book aside. A couple of hours later, Algren had finished the first page of a book he found 10 minutes ago. Max was still reading, and he had appeared to read far. How can you read so much? Algren asked irritably. Algren, if you keep on insisting on interrupting my reading, I will deal with you in quite despicable ways. Max spat at him audaciously. Max wasn't really a person or dog, mind you, who got really angry. Algren knew Max well enough to know Max was into the book very much. Algren simply walked out the door, and Max either didn't notice or care.